Cross-country mountain bike race tires. What do you want? First, what you do not want, or probably don't want. This is Kenda's Rush. I ride for Kenda, so all the tires I'm going to be talking about are Kenda's tires, but all the big bike brands have a good quiver of cross-country tires that are going to be similar, a little different, but similar. I do race this tire a bit, so don't think I don't, but I don't think it's a great tire for very many people. But this is the type of tire that you're going to hear most pros on social media talking about. What is a cross-country top-end race tire? It's going to be super fast rolling. So a tire like this basically almost has no knobs on it, right? That profile, you hardly see anything. This is called a file tread. So there's the most minimal amount of tread sticking up there to create friction to slow your tires down as you're rolling over terrain. It's also going to have side knobs, but they're going to be, again, very thin, not really sticking out at all. So when I ride this tire and I roll my bike onto those side knobs to corner, they don't stick in really well. It makes it so this tire can be really drifty and a little uncertain when I'm going around corners. I only ride and race this tire when I'm on very smooth, fast rolling terrain. If it's got like a lot of loose over hard on it, the tire just slides all over the place. And I find that because I know I'm going to be drifting everywhere, I tend to back off my speed a little bit. And I just don't end up riding as fast as I would if I had confidence in my tires. The other thing on these race tires is they're made with the race compound. In Kenda, this is the TR. I think that stands for trail race. I could be wrong there. But the casing is the sidewall material. And you can see this is incredibly flexible. It just means it's really thin. That's how they've shaved weight off these tires. And while light is really nice, of course, there's a cost to it. This tire, particularly if you rub these thin race casings against sharp rocks, they're not very robust. They are more likely to get a sidewall slice than your normal tire casing. So again, I won't ride this casing except on the most smoothest of terrain with rocks that are very smoothed off, because when I race, I take chances. And even though I've pre-ridden things, I may exit an obstacle with not the most perfect line because of the speed I'm carrying, or I might get a little bit more distance on like an air feature and land in a place that I hadn't exactly practiced, or maybe just slightly off my line. And that means that I'm more likely to rub these sidewalls hard against rocks and stuff, and it makes it more likely that I'm going to flat out in a race. So I don't recommend a super, super fast rolling tire with a super thin race casing for most people to race on. What I do recommend is a mid-race cross-country tire. This is Kenda's Booster. This is my go-to tire for cross-country riding. It's still going to be a very fast rolling tire, right? But you can see the tread there. It's got a little bit more tread to it, so it's not as drifty. The side knobs have a little bit bigger of a profile, so when you lay this tire on its side to corner, it's going to hold on to that terrain a little bit better. And it's in a normal casing, like an everyday casing, not like a crazy robust casing, but just like the regular casing. So it's flexible, but it's not like paper thin. If I rub these tires against some sharp rocks, they're generally gonna survive it. I'm not super likely to get a big sidewall tear. And man, those sidewall tears, especially in races, they tend to be challenging to get to plug. I find more often than not, if I slice a sidewall, I'm putting in a tube. And man, that is a big, big time suck for my race. So good mid-road tire. Another thing about what tire you're racing on for cross country is it should be the tire you spend the most time on. I live in Bend, Oregon, and our terrain is hard packed most of the time, a fair amount of loose over hard terrain. Our rocks are pretty sharp, but they also have really great traction, and the techie bits. So again, good sidewall, important. But we don't have any clay in our soil. So when it does rain, our soil drains incredibly well. So it's not very muddy. And if it does get wet because there's not clay, it's not slick. So the tires I have are excellent for loose over hard, dry conditions. These tires are not excellent in super muddy, super slick conditions. So I recommend having, if this is your reality, having a pair of mud tires. I travel always with a set of mud tires. These are Kenda's Karma Pros, and they're still a cross-country tire. They're still a very fast-rolling tire, but there's bigger gaps between the tread. And what that does is, it does mean there's a little bit more rolling resistance, so they're not quite as fast-rolling as those boosters. They're still a fast-rolling tire, don't get me wrong. But these extra gaps are really important because when you do get mud in there, it flings right out with the rolling. In a non-mud tire, these treads a lot closer together, which makes them faster rolling, but it also means when mud gets in there, it tends to pack in there and the tires start behaving like slicks, which is not great. So if you have a regular tire that's not meant for mud, I would recommend traveling to races with a mud tire just in case, because racing on slicks and mud, not great. If you live someplace where you're more likely to have wet, slimy, slick conditions all the time, this is probably your go-to tire. And you're gonna want to then travel potentially with a more fast-rolling, loose over hard style tire. But other than that, I recommend racing the tire that you know is predictable. You know how it's going to behave in all the conditions. That's where you are going to be the most fast. Confidence equals fast. So yeah. Oh, and last thought, if you're going to get yourself a set of mud tires, I recommend getting a narrower tire than what you normally ride. I like 2.4s. For most conditions, I just like a little bit wider tire. It lets me run a little bit lower pressure, and I like the feel of a lower pressure. I feel like my bike handles better, especially on bumpy terrain. But when I'm going to be in muddy conditions, I want a more narrow tire so it can cut through that mud and find the dry dirt underneath, or find the rock bed, whatever it happens to be underneath that slimy surface. And to cut through that, you want a more narrow tire. So these are 2.2s, which is what I use most of the time. But like if I'm going to go to BC, like Vancouver Island, and race in the fall, when it's going to be deep mud and super slick, slimy roots, I want a narrow tire. I'm going to run like a 1.8 or a 2.0 to really cut through there. So yeah. So get yourself a good set of cross-country, not enduro, not downhill tires for your cross-country racing. Ride these tires all the time. Know how they behave, know how they handle. Make sure when you go to your race that you've got good tread, that these tires aren't worn out, that you don't have a whole bunch of thin spots in your sidewalls from rubbing in time and time again. And confidence equals fast. No flats generally equals a faster finishing time than when you get flats. So that's my recommendation for your cross-country mountain bike race tire.